Using data gathering to improve the visitor exhibit experience. So the old way that we did it is we'd actually have some staff member watch visitors from a distance. We could take the extra step to do questioning, but we wouldn't do it on all of them, and sometimes we would let people fill out surveys. But it turned out there was a lot of interpretation bias of what people thought was the important thing to note might not have actually been what we really needed to know. And this is where some of the small interactions would just kind of be glossed over. So now we're going for a completely automated data collection built directly in the software itself. And originally we just wanted to aim for recording individual sessions. But as we got into it, feature creep got us, and we got really excited about all the other things. So this is the way. There are two general states, inactive and active. Any input will take you from inactive to active, and if you don't touch the screen for 60 seconds, it'll take you from active to inactive. Makes good sense. Yeah, it didn't really work out like that, but it was a good idea. But we did start to refine what is the difference between a session and a playthrough. There could be multiple playthroughs in one session, and a session is ideally one group, say, for example, family of visitors all together. So we could record the time between start and end of each session and each playthrough within it. So what did we actually get? These are the session times. Now we have the min, average, and max. Some of the max we excluded for they were 2 hours. It was an outlier of some people playing for too long. But you can see the min is essentially just a bit higher than the actual timeout of 60 seconds. So most likely people just touched the screen and walked away. We can see that the average is still pretty good. The quizzes are horrible, but that's because they're quizzes. So yeah, we can record time spans, but we need to go deeper. We started thinking about we can track absolutely everything. So we can go into the hardware, track what button is pressed, screen position and touches, how many touches, joystick movement, and if we're using the Kinect on a particular exhibit, we can track body position and joint position. We can look into particular states, like where they are, if they're in a certain menu, if they're reading a prompt, what language they decided to play with, what mission they chose, difficulty. But we can get into the real cool part of the game events itself, of like the number of times a particular object was touched, if a certain fact was found or info spot discovered, if they created special items like black holes or collected moon rocks or destroyed space civilizations, like just planetarium stuff. So, what did we learn with Stellar Playground? Oh, really quick, Stellar Playground is one of our exhibits on a touchscreen. A lot of people can interact and throw out stars, and it's just absolute chaos. You get to watch stellar evolution and collisions and awesomeness. Anyways, these palettes in the bottom corners is how people interact with it as far as adding stuff. But in 4 weeks, we detected almost 2 million touches, which is pretty nuts. But we could also track what particular item they were adding into the world. And so a lot of people were throwing in the yellow star as opposed to red dwarf or gas giant or planet. But we can go further than that and take a look at, like, if we sort this data based on touches, we can see the 14 duration session touching 400 some odd objects, and some hidden things of life started and civilizations created. Fun stuff. But we can drill down into the touched objects even more to get a little bit more of a perspective of how far people have gone in the total experience. You can see the outliers here are, for example, star, planet, gas giant. Those are the ones that they can actually place into the world. But protostar and black holes, which were the next highest touched out of all the sessions, these are things that have to be made. They have to cause a supernova of various different sized stars to create some of these things. And so this was a really cool way to see, not only are they touching the screen a lot, not only are they throwing a lot of things out there, but they're also seeing particular events and actually touching them. We can measure that. And so we Can go deeper as well. We have our Explore Mars, an open world exploration game. We have a lot of little mini game experiences dotted throughout it. And we can measure how many times people are playing certain ones and what's the distribution of what ones are most popular. For instance, in this case, I lost a bet and it turned out the drill job was actually the most popular. And we can actually see how some of those events end. We can see that for some reason in the landing mini game, everyone goes out of bounds. Uh, not quite sure why. We'll look into that one. But we can see info spots discovered, which is pretty cool. We can also go beyond just recording what is already in the game. We can actually talk about design changes, implement them, and then observe whether or not there have been changes in the user interactions. So our info button in Stellar Playground was a little small, not animated in any way. It was pretty boring. And we decided to make it 50% bigger, a little bit more animated, and rainbow bridge coloring. Very important. But we got really good return on that as far as people are actually interacting with it, and we can measure that. So data is good and all until it points out your flaws, which is actually still kind of good. But it is an emotional roller coaster. You get to see in Colonize Mars, we were rather excited by the idea that people had touched 11,000 times in 32 minutes playing the game. But then we saw that they had only gotten to stage 3, which out of 26 stages is not good. And as we started to look into it, we found out that the astronauts, there are these little guys you can pick up and assign to buildings to help automate the process of kicking materials around. And when one of these astronauts would kick material from one structure to another, if someone were to pick that thing up, intercept it between there, and then interact with it and toss it off and not take it to the construction target, it would decay and they would be locked at stage 3 in this case and touch the screen for 11,000 times, probably because they were frustrated and couldn't figure out what was wrong with this exhibit. So yeah, that's the downside of the roller coaster part. But because of this, we were interested how many times people would actually try to intercept these pickups, and so we, after figuring out the bug, we decided to track how often this happens, and it's really only 2% of all pickups ever distributed this way were intercepted, which is just amazing that with tracking this data, we were able to find this bug. And so then we get to talk about how we do our data storage. We pretty much have two options. Local, which is creating a text file every day of the previous day's data. Totally not confusing. I didn't make that. Okay, I definitely made that. But the SQL storage is a lot prettier, a lot better. You can use Grafana, is what we've been using for displaying the data. All right, that's the ending. Thanks, thanks for showing up.